in a second. Live.
Yep, I see it.
You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in Northport, Florida. I'm actually up in Tampa working my way south. And I got to tell you, from the frigid temperatures of Ohio to Tampa and now heading home shortly, we've got some really cool things happening tonight. This whole area up here right now is busting out because it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Dallas Cowboys tonight. And I am ripped in shreds because I've been a Dallas Cowboy all my life and I live here and I support Tampa. So I can't wait for this game, but I'm whoever wins, I'm going to be happy and sad at the same time. It just sucks, but it's all good. And I appreciate all of the rah-rahs for both teams. That's what I love. So let's all cheer and have a good time tonight, and may the best team win. Uh, I've got a very special guest in the house who I missed last month, who ran out there and signed up for January, I'm sure, because she has been off the air with me for a little while. But Commissioner Alice White is in the house. How you doing, Alice?
Okay, and I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment, John. That's
Yes.
why
Well,
I end up
I, I
right.
I looked at that and I was like, holy cow, she actually went ahead and took the initiative and signed up for January. The last time you called me and said, hey, are we doing the show? I was actually getting ready to
Yes,
be wheeled back for surgery.
and
So
I was
I
flabbergasted. I believe you answered the phone. I'm like, what is this? That's the last time you should be answering the phone when you're getting ready to be wheeled into for surgery. Yeah, yeah.
and I would have done it. I would, if they'd have let me have my tablet right there, I'd have done it with my gown on and everything. I didn't even think about that. That would have been awesome.
Yes.
And I was at SMH. Everything went great. I'm still healing up.
Good.
Uh,
Okay.
Difficult thing for me was not being able to pick up 10 pounds or more because my granddaughters are both heavier than that.
Yeah.
And they were going, can pick me up, pick me up. And I'm like, I can't do it. So I did a lot of kneeling,
Mhm.
and giving hugs that way. So if my doc is listening, I did not do anything wrong, have not yet. So knock
Good.
on wood.
Good for you.
So anyway, what is happening uh, really in the great city of Northport?
Do you want an open question? I was hoping you would just lead me down a path about that.
Well, how about this? What are some of the new things that we do know that are happening, such as the Toledo Blade corridor?
What are new things are happening there other than
Oh,
development coming?
well,
People are excited about a Wawa going in there. Are you
yep,
talking about that type of new
yep.
things?
That, and how about the interchange at Toledo Blade in 75?
Um, that's going to be improved upon.
Yep.
Yep, but that's a ways down the pike.
But
Um,
that's all right. People need to know about it because anybody who's dealing with that intersection in the morning or
right.
even in the afternoon, it gets chaotic. And to know that that's actually something that's being forecasted out,
Yes,
it may be down the road, but there's some participation that has to happen with that too, right?
yes, that and also the 75 in Sumter. Those are FDOT projects, and they have to go through a whole slew of site plans and studies, and it's not an instant fix. So that is coming down the pike. So I know when people talk about that, things don't happen overnight. Same thing with that traffic light for where the high school is, Northport High School, and across the street is Heron Creek Middle School. That is in the works as well to get a traffic light on Price Boulevard there. And that's when I learned that school districts do not pay for those traffic devices, even if they are causing a traffic
Issue.
concern. They don't pay for that. That's the municipalities that have to cover that, and that was an interesting thing for me to find out about because we don't treat coming of schools the same way we do with, say, a commercial project, because then we want to know traffic studies and how could you do this? Because I've always wondered about, for example, Lamarck Elementary School. I don't know if you know where that is, but that's at the
Yep.
North Salford Boulevard, which dead ends at the interstate. And it's on, of course, Lamarck Street. That's where they got the name from. But there's only one way in and one way out. There's no way to get out of the neighborhood that's back there other than coming back to Salford. So the traffic, it has become really an issue on Salford, and then backs up when parents drop off their kids and come back to Price and Salford. It just creates all of these pockets of traffic problems, and that was, something that I is not even discussed when you're considering where to build a school, as far as how traffic is going to be handled, and who's going to be out there directing traffic. That is totally up to the municipality to ask those questions. Not that they're going to make a difference, because again, the onus is on the municipality to figure out how to deal with that.
Well, I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because a couple things I'll throw at you that you can run with there for a minute. Um, we talk about River Road and how it's improved all of a sudden. Well, that really wasn't all of a sudden. That was over years it took to get that implemented in. So give kind of
Yeah,
a comparison to what happened at River Road and the expansion there, how long that took, and where we're at in the process of Sumter and Toledo Blade interchanges at 75, because I
right.
think we could use that as a good roadmap to future.
Right. Well, River Road was a whole different animal. That was two lanes, and they improved the intersection of 41 and River Road first. And I remember, and this was in 2007, and I remember this because I was training for RAGBRAI. Do you know what that is? The Ride Across Iowa.
Yep.
It's a great, it's the Great Ride Across Iowa, and I remember that was in 2007. So I was looking for long distances to bike, and I would bike from Northport, my house, to my parents' house, and they lived off of Center Road.
Okay.
So that meant traveling on the sidewalk in Northport as far as you got to those the mobile home park there, and then you had to cross 41 in order to go with the traffic and pedal on the little shoulder. That's all there was. But there was far less traffic then, because you can hear the traffic coming. Once you cross River Road, you heard that noise, so you knew that the light changed and you better get off way to the right. But crossing at that intersection, there were no crosswalks there. There were no lights for pedestrians. It was really a
Right.
terrible, terrible section. So that's why that had to get improved upon first. And then the rest of that funding, again, there were those of us that said that's what impact fees are supposed to be paying for. When you were going to impact roads, there should be money in that road impact fee fund, but there just wasn't enough. So that was
Right.
a and I'm sure that was a trade-off, because that was a county road, and finally there were deals made so that was traded with the FDOT, with a road in Siesta Key, and I don't remember what road that is. So the River Road became a state road, and that little road up in Sarasota, which was a state road, became a county road. So that was the trade-off, and that opened up more funding opportunities for that. And
So
people are
would you say when you have to go, and we talk about these partnerships and different things that have to happen for these roads to expand, you're looking at River Road, which is also crossing a 41. So the funding there, that interchange had to change first in order to adapt everything down. And I know when that was built, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me on this, it looked very confusing when you came from a 2 lane road down. And I think that's one of the biggest interchanges that we have from Sarasota all the way down to probably the Naples area. That interchange at River Road is massive.
Yes, yes. And people who weren't here, don't know that the whole problem, that's one of the reasons why that interchange, that intersection was done first, is because the traffic would back up because it was just one lane on River Road, and you only had one lane to turn, make a right and head north, or you had one lane that was supposed to do everything else, go straight
Right.
or left, and people would actually like wait in the, in the intersection before they could turn. So the traffic would actually back all the way back to like Center Road. It was just, and that's really why they had to tackle that first. So that did help traffic move along through there a
Much
lot.
better.
Notice now it's backed up again, but I think a lot of that is because of the construction and because we're still traveling on two lanes, one way in each direction, one lane in each direction. So that will clear up. And of course, it's a shock to see everything that was removed. Those house, that development that's right there. I remember I went down there at night and I said to myself, what are those lights? And I realized it's the lights from the houses. You never saw them before because they had all
Right.
woods in front of them. So, and this is why I encourage people that, when you build your house or wherever you are, you need to create your own little, wall around you with shrubs and trees, and create that buffer for yourself. Because if you're depending on somebody else providing a buffer for you, you have no control over that when it goes. And I'm a
No.
firm controlling your own destiny and controlling what you can, which is your space around you.
And I'm glad you kind of talked about that too, because as hard as we're working at keeping trees, there is a word called progress that goes in there too, and a lot of our spaces are already designated for growth in that regard. And River Road was is a really good example, because River Road is really a mega 4 lane. It's going to be an evacuation route on top of that. But
Right.
we've got some boulevards in Northport that people are used to. And I like to talk about these because Price Boulevard is going to expand at some point in the very near future.
Very near
And
future.
yeah,
Yeah.
very near. And people need to understand, specifically in Northport, if you're moving around and you're looking at your relocation in Northport, keep in mind that if our road says the word boulevard behind it, it's a potential 4 lane road. and
Hmm.
and it's really easy in Northport. It may not be easier in other areas, but Northport by itself, if you just understand, if you live on a boulevard, eventually down the road, it could be, and I'm not going to say will be, because we never know how growth goes here, but
Right.
it's destined for that at
Yes.
some point.
Right.
And I
And that
think that's a good, safe way of putting it, don't you?
you bring up a good point when I go back to saying you have to control your own destiny, that people really need to just look at the roadmap, literally the map of those roads. We have Salford Boulevard, like you
Yep.
said, Cranberry Boulevard, and you can see how all those little neighborhoods feed into those are called arterial roads. And I knew here when I came 32 years ago that I didn't want to live anywhere near a main road. And one of the boxes that I had to have checked was I wanted to live at least 3 blocks away from what is a main road. And that, for me, that was Salford Boulevard. And, I, through the years, I've had people that I know that built a house right on Salford Boulevard and then would complain about the traffic. And they said, well, it wasn't busy when I moved here. Again, you had to look to see what was going to happen. I knew 32 years ago these were all platted lots around me. They had the potential for all having houses. So that's why I created my little paradise from the get-go, even when there was just 3 houses on my street, because I
Well,
knew when they did develop, I didn't want to see those houses. I didn't want to be impacted by that and have to feel like, oh, bummer, they're clearing that lot, because I wouldn't see it if I put up my own little Florida paradise, which I did.
and I want to go back for a second, because how long have you been in Northport?
32 years.
All right, so 32 years ago, if you looked up the plotted lots, don't they look the same from 30 years ago?
What do you mean?
Much that
Oh,
how the
we're
city
there.
is laid out.
Yes, all these quarter acre lots, they were there. I don't believe any new quarter acre lots. What changed is the land use change. For
Yep.
example, to Blade, that was all, yes, those, that was cattle, that was farm, that was just pasture. I remember that was 2 lanes, stops. There were stop signs everywhere. Um, Salford Boulevard, when it hit 41, and Sumter, they didn't even go across the road. They stopped. They were T intersections, and they were stop signs. That's what they were. That's when I moved here. Cranberry Boulevard, when it hit 41, that was a stop sign. Can you imagine that? You had to go in the middle. One of those deals where you went in the middle to see if any cars were coming, and then you went. People would get killed today if we still had that up there.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
but all those quarter acre lots were there, and when the land use changes came along, that's when they were those planned developments. Bobcat Trail was the first one to come on Toledo Blade, and then that whole other area north of that plantation came into play. But that was raw land, and they were able to design where things should go. But everything else, yeah, was already platted, including all those houses on South on Price. I remember that one house that it's a 2-story house. I don't know if you know which one I'm talking about, but I remember that being built. And
Well,
that was,
and here's the, go
but
ahead, go ahead.
even then I said, this was 30 something years ago. I was working for mosquito control. That's how I discovered Northport. I've said this before. When I moved down to Florida, I first lived in Sarasota, and while I was waiting for a teaching job to open in that summer, they were looking for summer help for mosquito control. So I was assigned to a tech who was assigned to Northport. So that's how I discovered Northport and realized this is where I want to live, because this is real Florida. And um, I saw that house getting built, and even then I said, but it's right on the corner. It's on the corner of still what was a main road. Price was still the only way to get from east to west, and I just
Right.
thought, all of that, they're making all this effort to build this beautiful house, but they're still going to be on what is a busy street. And so again, like you said, people just really have to take better care about where they choose to live. I had a lot of boxes that I wanted checked back then. Not only did I want to live 3 blocks away from any kind of a main road, I wanted city water. I got that. And I had to have at least two lots. And actually the property that my realtor found, because that's another thing. I went, and you'll appreciate this, John. I went to a realtor. Yes.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
she got that map where the water lines were, and I said it had to be at least 2 lots. She found 3 lots owned by the same person, and I took 2, and my builder said, I'll take the third one. And he built a house there too. The greatest neighbors. We've both been here for the same amount of time. So that's what people have to do, is just really take control of what you want. And also what somebody told me is, go look at where you want to live, not just on the weekend. Okay. You need to go there during the rush hours. You need to go there at night. You need to go there in the morning at different times, so that you can see how that community lives and breathes, what happens. Because some people, for example, I live right off of Eldron as well, and Eldron has become an extremely busy street. And I
Well,
remember,
that also is impacted by Lamarck.
that's why it is.
Yeah.
I knew somebody who built a house there, who was a teacher, and he said they only came down 2 times to look at that property, and it was on a Sunday. They never realized how much traffic is during the week, Monday through Friday, because they never bothered to come around during that. And so my realtor was really good in pointing those things out to me. Yeah,
Absolutely. And that, here's the funny thing
yeah,
is that all your check marks that you had, people can shop that way today.
yeah,
And the rules of the game haven't changed for 30 years because the plotting of the lots are the same as they were back then.
right,
So our city actually has had its roadmap so to speak, into play for over 30 years. But because you had a idea of what you wanted to do, that changed how you shopped.
Right.
So but I want to go back for a second, and I want to ask a different question of you, because you're now in a different position than you were back then. Shopper, mosquitoes to commissioner. So now that you're on the backside of hearing people say, well, I didn't know it was a boulevard. How do you handle that? And I'm going to ask you this in your diplomatic way, because it does have to be diplomatic.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your commissioner answer for people who are living on boulevards right now, and there is progress going to be happening for you?
I don't know how diplomatic it is, and I actually just answer the same way that I would if I wasn't commissioner. It's the same thing I've been saying all along, is that it's always been that way. This isn't a big surprise that things were changed. It's one thing if something was in place and then something changed to the other than what you thought you were getting, and then you're kind of stuck there. But that's not the case. Even when people um, make comments and talk about the right of ways, the swale, and it's pointed out that your property ends pretty much where that drainage pipe is that goes under your driveway, or look at the utility poles. That is where your property line ends.
And
So
yeah,
you're on major those arterial roads, they have a bigger frontage, we call it, but that's not really their yard. That's not their property. And especially Price, there's a lot of space between that drainage pipe that goes under the driveway and that road. And when that road goes all the way back to that, people are going to be understandably upset. And but that's the way it is everywhere. That is how it is. Nobody has a utility pole put on their property. That is the dividing line. So
well, but let's talk a little bit about price, in the sense that, and I tend to believe that once Price Boulevard gets 4 lanes, flow of traffic and noise is going to,
yes,
I think, either decrease a little bit.
it's going to be really high.
You think it'll be higher?
Yes, and you know why, John? Because the plan that was approved, which I did not, as a citizen, I did not. I wasn't in favor of it. I went to the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board sessions for that, and I went to the commission sessions for that, because it's 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction. But they also agreed to put in what's referred to as a suicide lane. Those left hand turning arrows all the way through, in order to accommodate people living on Price, that they wouldn't have to change their driving habits to get home. And I just thought, that's 5 lanes of asphalt that they're going to have across Price. The initial idea was to have a median, which with trees and shrubs, which would have
Would have helped.
very much buffered a lot of that noise and that sound. And now people are going to, either side, they're going to be dealing with 5 lanes of asphalt, and I'm just not happy with that. And I'm not happy the fact that it's taking place during my tenure here, so that I'm going to get like blamed for that. But people have to realize that plan was approved some years ago. And
Oh, you
you
know
know
that here again, let's go back. Let's go back and let's connect some dots, because we started out this show by talking about Toledo Blade and
yeah,
Sumter
Sumter.
and River Road, and talking about how long these projects take to get moving forward. Well, Price Boulevard's been in the works. This is not. I want to say we've been talking about Price Boulevard for probably 20 years.
Yes, right. And one of the
And
problems on that
that
the Northport's always had, and this is what I'm really glad our city manager has addressed it, is that yes, it takes a long time for a plan to come to fruition. But with Northport, we would have these plans, and then there was no funding, and there was no real plan. Okay, what's our plan to get the funding? It's just like, you want to go on vacation. Okay, here's where I want to go. Then you have to start putting that money aside or figuring out where you want to have it, not say, okay, it's June, we're supposed to be going to the Bahamas. Oh, gee, we never put aside any money for this or whatever. This was always Northport's problem in having these plans. And like you said, it's been a very long time. I remember going to all those community sessions and the workshops about the alternative things we can do. One of them was to build roads with bridges across the canals in those little neighborhoods to create another east-west corridor. Another one was to use Tropicare as a major east-west corridor and four-lane that. All these ideas were brought up, and some of them, those were shot down. That people said, no, I don't want all that traffic in my neighborhood. We need to focus on Price, which was always destined to be a major east-west corridor. And
Right.
those plans were approved, and then that's it. There was no funding set aside for it, and the price, as you know, just keeps going up every single year. So I was really
It's
put
it's
that
almost
out.
it's got to be double from where it started, at least at this point.
Right. Yeah.
And
That all
and
doesn't have
that's
a.
something else that we deal with as a city, especially with the city that's growing. It's not like we're established and we already have these lanes and we're talking about repaving. We're actually talking about building the
Yes.
infrastructure.
Right. Yes.
And that's different from a lot of cities. I mean, comparing us to Jacksonville, or even comparing us to Venice, who is a close neighbor, or comparing us to Port Charlotte. Port Charlotte's infrastructure is, I want to say it's high, not higher, um, more complete than
Yes.
ours,
Right.
because we're so new and we haven't been built out. I mean, we've I think we're one of the communities, at least along the border, or not border, the coastal line, that has this many vacant lots still left to
Hmm.
build houses on.
Right. Right.
And we're going at such a clip right now that I don't know that we had projected even this amount of population after the last economic downturn. I don't know that we saw this push forward again this quickly.
Right. Right.
And how are you guys as a commission dealing with this fast growth, knowing that there's still infrastructure needed?
Yeah. Well, like I said, what I really like is the different direction that the city manager has put into place. That we have to acknowledge the fact that build out is expected to be what, 250,000 people. We
Yep.
have the platted lots that are going to give us that population. So just by putting blinders on and pretending that's not going to happen is ridiculous. So we have started talking with the we had a joint meeting, in fact, last year with the Charlotte County commissioners about another I-75 interchange at Yorkshire, and the Raintree area there, because I couldn't believe that area. I used to go take Price all the way out when I needed to go to the end of Veterans Boulevard, instead
Yep.
of, and now I couldn't believe it. I did that the other day. How much traffic was on that end? And I said to myself, where are these people going? And then I realized they're going the same place I am. There's just a lot more people now who are taking that way, and that's become, a traffic area. Stop those stop signs. There used to be nobody at Yorkshire and Raintree, and that's why people would go through the stop sign, because there was never anybody there. And now there's lots of cars. So planning ahead like that, because like you said, when we started this conversation, it takes a long time to get these things in place. But by the time those interchanges come in, well, they're calling it interchanges, but it'll be one exit. It's going to be one of those double exits, like when you go down to the Fort Myers airport, how you get off, but there's multiple. You can go to the airport, or you can go to another exit. It's going to be something like that so that you can get off and go on Yorkshire, or get off and go on Raintree, which will take you to Veterans Boulevard. And that in itself will alleviate a lot of traffic off of Toledo Blade. Because right
And
now,
probably King's Highway Exchange too.
right, right. Because if you have somewhere else where that traffic can go, because right now here in Northport, people who live on the eastern part of Price have to go to Price to get on Toledo Blade in order to get on the interstate. Whereas if they had an exchange there, they'd be heading east rather than having to head west to maybe to go east. So it's just kind of ridiculous. So, but that's going to take a long time. But that has the wheels are turning with that. I'm told that all of the agencies that are involved with that are that's starting to roll.
And what agencies would that be for 75? I mean, you're talking state, right?
It's FDOT, right,
Yep.
right,
So
and that,
that's completely different funding, right, than what
right,
we've been talking about.
yes, and that
And
comes along with what's called the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. There's one for Sarasota, there's one for Charlotte, and that's where the things kind of overlap, because even River Road is partly it affects Charlotte County, but it's that the southern part of River Road is actually, I believe, the Charlotte MPO, not the Sarasota, because they capture the Charlotte County side of that. So that confused me. Like, why are they involved with River Road? Because River Road all the way past 41 is still Sarasota County, but that most of those other roads are part of Charlotte County once you get into um, on 776, and you I'll just say make a left. That's Charlotte County.
well,
Dearborn.
what is it? What's it like having to work or even get involved in working some of these projects now? Do you find it to be, and you've been part of the commission now for a while, and do you find it to be a challenge, or do you find it to be that all these different communities, you all work extremely well together and it's an easy flow?
What has impressed me and what I've learned is that these agencies are in place. There is a system in place. They're like the little dots that you plot on a graph, and it's just a matter of connecting the dots and knowing, okay, we want to do this. So where do we have to go from there to bring all of this together to get the result that we're looking for? And that's what I have enjoyed about my time so far on the commission, working with my fellow board members, is that, for example, Commissioner Emmerich, he's on the MPO, so he comes back and reports. But when we have these discussions, he brings that to them to say, "Hey, we need to be, hooking up with this and getting this together." So, and I really like the fact that we met with the Charlotte County commissioners. We have scheduled a joint meeting with the Sarasota County commissioners. That one's taken a little longer just because of the election cycle. We wanted to wait until the new commissioners got seated and the holidays were over, and that's been scheduled, and I just can't remember when that is, but I did get that invite for that meeting to start talking with them about projects and things, and probably River Road is going to come into that as well.
Do you see chemistry changing now that we have a new city manager in place? Do you see that chemistry? And not that anybody did a bad job before, but there is a difference between somebody who is a fill-in and somebody who has the title and the ability to move it forward. Do you see that connection now with our community, our growth, and then our connection with other communities growing in the same upward momentum style?
I do. I do. To me, it seems to be a lot more organized, and things aren't just put out there and then allowed to die, which is what used to happen before. There might be a big rumbling about something, and then it kind of went nowhere. Just like I said before about, here's a project. okay, we approved the plan, and it just went nowhere. And somebody would have to say, hey, wait a minute, didn't we approve that? Didn't we talk about that before? Because it wouldn't go anywhere. Now I really have a lot of confidence in the city and being able to take those ideas and take those plans and run with them and actually go get them in order. And every time I listen to um, our neighborhood development services talk about their plan for that ULDC, which again, that's another document that's been talked about, I think, ever since I moved here, that it needed to be updated, needed this, needed that. They're actually addressing it, and they have a whole outline, they have a plan, and they're not going to allow it to be tossed aside or say, well, let's do this now. No, let's follow the plan and get it done the way you planned it. Then we can go back and maybe tweak it if you feel. But that we need to get from start to finish one time. Let's at least get a finish one time, and then you can go back and make some adjustments.
And the I want to talk with you about the city manager now. We really don't see, when we really haven't had an opportunity to have these discussions as far as how the commission works in conjunction with the city manager to kind of move things forward. Can you kind of give your overview of how that relationship works to make our city stronger?
Yeah, I always told people, and I always refer to it as city manager of any municipality or an administrator, such as Jonathan Lewis, as you know, used to be our city manager, and he went to the county. Is I see them as being the CEOs of a company. CEOs of a company, they don't go in unless they're on that show Undercover Boss, I think it's called, where
Right,
they
right.
go in and they actually flip the burgers. That's not a city manager's job. All right. They take the vision that and the policies that are set by the commission, and it's his or her job to figure out how to implement it. That's not my job. All right, this is what we want. You figure out how to do it, and you have the players to do it. You have all these departments, you have these department heads, and those department heads have to get their staff together to have competent staff to make it work. And if it's not working, then it's that city manager's job to say we seem to have you know a point here where we're not moving forward, and then that's his or her job to figure out what do we have to do that. Not we, meaning the commission. That's why you have a city manager type of government.
Do you see the city departments improving now that we have one a different style of direction in play, and I think a more progressive outlook on commission side of things, trying to strive for a better city as a whole? Do you see that growth now being spread through the departments in the city of Northport?
I do. I do. I when I talk to staff on the rare occasions that I do, because we're really not, other than saying hi, how you doing, but we can't give direction or have anything like that
Correct.
with staff. But I they just seem to be more content, and they also have this sense of pride, and that they are being taken seriously and they are being valued for what they can offer for the city, which is why they applied for the job to begin with. Let somebody do what they're good at doing, and if you don't think they're good at what they're doing, then you deal with that. Then you didn't hire the right person for the job. And that's not my job to figure that out. But I've noticed that staff seems to be more coordinated. They seem to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just more,
Cohesive.
yeah, just more in tune with each other, and what is the ultimate goal that we all have in mind. And I find that nobody ever thinks I ask a stupid question, especially when it comes to IT. I have to tell you, they deserve an award from me. That's for sure, because I am so not good with anything that has to do with technology. And they're very patient, and they get it done, and they help me, and it's that I really appreciate, and that's what all the staff seem to have.
So I want to step back for a second. We've kind of hit on, we've mentioned water a couple times, and I know that there was a time last year where everybody got up in arms because the projection of city water, city sewer, and
Yeah.
everybody kind of panicked. And I say this because we had protesters, we had petitions, we had all these things out there. I think the reality is that eventually we're all going to, hopefully at some point, and I'm not talking tomorrow, so don't anybody panic, but we have to project these things out through a city level, and we have to start working on these projects now, because isn't the state dictating a lot of these things?
Yes, and it's good. I personally don't think they're dictating it fast enough, because we need to get off of septic. That is one of the things that's killing Florida. Is we have excess nutrients in our waterways. As you know, we have red tide that's been out there now for what, months? I don't know. It's ridiculous, and it's one of those sad things that people become accustomed to, and unfortunately it's like, okay, that's just the way it is. And it, I don't want to see Florida become like that, that oh, we need to check the red tide, and oh, red tide is here, and pretty soon people just stop going to the beach because red tide's usually there. So we need to take that step, a lot of steps, and get us off of septic. It's also one of the things that contribute to the decline of all of our natural springs in Florida, is the influx of nutrients in the aquifer, and that's directly related to fertilizing, and it's related to septic leakage, and it's human, it's us, it's people making that negative impact, and the fact that we're on septic tanks is ridiculous. I'm so glad I'm on city water, but like I said, that was one of the boxes I wanted checked. um, but if they came here tomorrow and said we can hook up to city sewer, I'd be on board in a flash. Because dealing with septic tanks is just atrocious, especially again when after Ian, when I had 20 inches of water on my road, and that's not good. That's everybody's drain field was was putting all that bad stuff, and we're all walking around in it and everything else, and I just thought that's terrible. It's just awful that this is how we're living in what we call a civilized society. We need to get off of septic really fast, and I wish the state would move faster with that and be a little bit more firm about how that's destroying the very nature of Florida, and the fact that we're surrounded on three sides by water. We have a high water table. It should be a no brainer that septic just doesn't mix with all that.
Well, and I want to go back to what you said there, because I think that out of everything, that is a living example currently in people's minds because of blue tops on the roofs right now. Is that, I don't know that I want to give population more credit than I'm going to with this statement, but I don't believe that people were putting the raw sewage and the problem with the flooding together because the flooding was so powerful and so um, destroying by itself. But
Right.
when you put that next problem in there, which is truly the septic tanks, yes, they have lids on them. Sorry, but when those lids have that kind of pressure on them, they're going to back up. things are
Hmm.
going to happen. Um, but I want to go one step further with that, and I want to ask this because it is something that as a real estate agent, I'm concerned about. We have safety checks, and we have home inspections when these homes are being sold, and a lot of these older tanks are still out there. Um, but are we? And there are cities. I'm going to clarify this for you because I don't want to. I don't want to. I want to tee this up the right way for you. There are cities out there that have some really good guidelines on checking septic tanks, and there's some requirements that go with that. Are we looking at any of those so that we can keep the older tanks from just being ignored? Are we going to try to put some control factors in there like other cities have, where maybe every 5 years or every 4 years they require a septic inspection,
Action, yeah,
uh, and pump out? I think that if we did something like that, our citizens would be a little bit up in there. But I
yeah.
also think that we have to approach this to help our environment. Is that something that you guys are at least looking at, or is that something that you're
I
willing to bring to
talked
the
about,
table?
yeah, we've talked about the fact that they do require inspections in, like Charlotte County does, and we don't do that here in Northport. And I think it's come to the surface, just like the stuff in your septic
Yeah.
tank, Phil. But it's just gone away. People, are, like you said, it's a very touchy subject, but it should be addressed because it is a problem. And even when I researched that, like, what are they inspecting for? Other than they inspect, of course, the tank itself, because yes, I have an old septic tank. It's one of the concrete ones, and they look to see if it's cracked or whatever. But they really, what they're testing is that drain field, and if that drain field is saturated, um, then that means stuff is not even having a chance to, I guess, percolate down. It's
Break
just
down and
right
break
out
down. Yep.
and carrying out to our waterways, and it goes into the creek and goes into the river and goes into the harbor, and there's your excess nutrients. And that's why they refer back to septic tanks being the number one of the biggest causes of excess nutrients because of that. And uh, yeah, it's a matter of, well, let's just get off of septic instead of just putting band-aids on things and limping along here. Let's just get off of them already and let's move it along. I'm disappointed that even the first phase that we approved is going to take so long to see that come to
Is
fruition. I
is there
just
is there a projection out on how long that first phase is?
And it's years. If I remember correctly, it was years before everything is put in place. They're working on things like the lift stations. I don't think I have the terminology right there, but like the pump stations. We've been buying property where those stations have to go. Uh, just a long process before it even gets to where people are actually living. Even though I've had people calling me that they were looking to buy property, like you said, we just had this discussion about knowing where you're going to live. They were looking to buy property. It's on septic. Could you tell me how long it's going to be before it's on city sewer? So we'll just hold off. I said, well, I think you'll be holding off for quite some time. Um, yeah, unfortunately. So, but people are anxious for that. And I don't know any community that went through that, such as El Jobin. El Jobin is a really older community, and I don't know any community that when they were off of septic and got into the city sewer said, "Oh, we should never have done this." They all said the complete opposite. Like, we should have done this a long time ago, and how that just opened more possibilities for them to utilize their own property. Um,
And you're right there because part of the and I want to kind of talk a little bit about what happens with Northport because we have most of our front yard is now taken up by a septic tank and a drain field. And so you're really not able to put a tree out there. maybe get some shade, get some privacy, do some
Well, actually,
special landscaping.
I'm going to stop you there because you can. It shouldn't be in the right in the middle of your drain field, and they should always be what's called drought tolerant. And you need to make your choices wisely. But people do have trees on their front yard. I do. Um, People have shrubs on their front yard. I know a lot of people put palms on their front yard, thinking they're safe for some reason, and I'm thinking, well, if you put a palm there, put some shrubs there that'll grow tall and give you some height.
Private.
But and there's that thing like, oh no, you can't. You can only put a palm there. Um, my septic tank actually went right in front of a huge pine tree that was saved when I had my house built, and I lost it during Ian. It snapped at the top, and I had to have it cut. But that septic tank was right there at the base of that tree, so whenever I had it serviced, they had to chop through the roots, and the tree was fine. Septic tank was fine. And so I tell people you just have to be really, really careful about what you plant, but you can have things in the front yard. But most
You
people
can,
go that route.
you can, but here's the thing, and I think this is where people kind of get lost, is there's still a section of your front yard without your drain field and your septic tank that can hold a tree and not interfere or have fear of interfering. But you should ask your septic company when they come out and pump your tank every 4 years. And that's really what you should be doing as a regular maintenance on your tank, is to making sure that everything is working properly, your drain field's good, get that septic tank pumped out, make sure it's in good shape, and then ask them, what can I plant? Where should I plant it? They will tell you, and they will lay it out for you so it doesn't interfere with your drain field or your tank itself. And you can maximize the usage of your front yard. But imagine if that tank and that drain field were gone and we weren't having this conversation because we were on sewer.
Right. And actually, unfortunately, you're not never going to find a septic tank company to say yes, you can plant it here. They're a business that they have a financial interest, and for them to say, yeah, you can plant it here, and if you should have any kind of a problem, then you're going to blame them. Say, hey, you said I could do this. So I tell people, just research it yourself. Again, going back toward the beginning of our conversation about, take ownership of where you're going to live, and take some time to research for yourself, the facts, and look around and see what people have done. And there are people like me that have there's a neighbor up the street that planted an oak tree on his front yard. And that, I tell you, that's something I never would have done, but he did. That oak tree is still there to this day, and no problem at all. And I have, trees. I planted an elm tree next to my driveway. I have people that have planted trees in the corner, like towards the road, um, and they're fine. And you can do it, but you're not going to get anybody if you expect somebody to give you permission and then take responsibility
Oh, no,
for it.
no.
Not going to happen. No.
No, no, they won't take responsibility for it. They may instruct you on how to do it, but they're 100% going to give you some insight on where. Because Elrod Septic. He's um, very well known in our area. Um, they don't like to plant a tree anywhere near the septic tank or the drain field,
Right.
but they will point out, and they have been very gracious about pointing out to my customers where they should place their tree. And there is, depending on how that is all laid out too.
Yes.
I, those tanks are and drain fields are sometimes laid across that front yard in a situation where it kind of does block it, but at the same
Hmm.
time, there's a portion of your yard that can still be utilized.
Oh
And
yeah.
what you
Yeah.
said, which was find the things that grow the right way and
Yes.
provide you shade and privacy at the same time,
Right.
and
Because
kind
like
of
I
do that.
said, yeah,
Go
the
ahead.
key is drought tolerant, and that's what it is. And I
Yep.
can understand how if a company or anybody would say drought tolerant and you didn't, and because you didn't hear it or you didn't understand what that meant, and then you planted something that is not good, and then you had all these invasive roots in your septic tank, that would come back and bite that person in the butt because you didn't hear drought tolerant. But drought tolerant means those are plants and trees that don't seek out
Ab-
water sources. So um, and yeah, planting it right next to you're in the middle of your drain field, probably not, but I have to
Not
tell
a
you, I
good idea.
have a strawberry guava tree, which is not native, but it is drought tolerant. It planted itself. The one that I planted when I had the house built is in the corner. And this was a seed that planted itself, and it grew huge. It's still there. In fact, it survived Ian. It got tilted. And I just thought, that looks really interesting. I'm going to leave it. So it's
That's
still
so
there. Never had any problems with my septic or drain field.
well.
Though I wouldn't have never have planted a tree in the middle of my yard, but certainly shrubs, and you can plant shrubs that grow what we call tree like. They look like trees, but they're really shrubs. So for the most part, their roots don't go any lower than 18 inches below the ground, and that's perfectly fine. And
And next time, bring a list.
okay,
So we've actually run over. I've got to get off the air,
yes, okay.
but we blew through 55 minutes pretty daggone quick, I believe.
I know. I had to go. If you notice, I was walking around. I had to get my cord because I got the little notice that my
Party.
battery was going
Woo!
dead.
All right. Well, this is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio Real Talk and Vice Mayor Commissioner Alice White saying thanks, have a great day, and share this video. You guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Alice, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Bye bye
Bye
now.
bye.